So I had the only way that I can even think to describe this is a bubble pop. And so I'm going to do my best to kind of put into words exactly what that was. And as I'll probably get into, even the act of doing that is itself completely paradoxical. I'm not even sure where to begin with this, honestly. There's almost nothing to say. I guess where I'll start is what really came forth kind of as just out of this whole, I don't even know that I would call it an experience. It doesn't feel like an experience. The word interpretation really came forth. And so it was like last night that this opened, and since then I've kind of been digesting, I guess you might say, and just sitting. But the word interpretation, that the simplest way that I can put what has been seen is that reality is just happening. Reality is what's happening. The mind interprets reality. The mind interprets what's happening. And interpretation is the dream that you live in. And that statement is very simple, but the depth of that is I'm really in awe. I haven't even really been able to have words, because that words are an interpretation. Even the words that I'm saying are an interpretation of reality, and its interpretation is, I guess you could say it's not true, but in one sense, interpretation is just a perspective. Interpretation, there can be 5 different interpretations of reality, the exact same event in reality. And you could say that each one is true, but in that way, none holds any more weight than any other. So you could also equally say that none of them are true. So reality is just this. It's just this. And then the mind reflects on reality, interprets reality. Interpretation would be my hand. Trees, leaves, shirt, body. Reality is just the raw sensation, visual field, auditory field, and then the mind bends on itself. Reality bends on itself, reflects on itself, interprets itself, and that is the dream. That's the dream. It's very simple. So something arises, the mind labels it anger, the mind labels it grief, the mind labels it sadness. That's an interpretation. That's the dream. The mind assigns good, bad, right, wrong. I like it, I don't like it. self, other, subject, object. Jennifer, not Jennifer. It's very simple. It's so simple that it almost like it doesn't need saying, and even to express words is an interpretation of the truth. It's an interpretation. And we live our lives in interpretation. And it's just shocking, you know. And I've had so many different points where there have been like practices that I was really striving for, you know, like meditation, or, you know, sitting and like questioning, like, is this thought true? Is this thought true? Is this thought true? But that was all just effort. You know, that was all an interpretation that I should be doing something. You know, I should be doing something. Even awakening, God, like everything. Awakening, the word awakening is a concept, it's an interpretation. Freedom, liberation, me, not me. Every word, it's all an image that's created. It's all interpretation. It's not reality. An awakening is waking up out of interpretation, out of the mind, out of the dream. And it's like thoughts still arise. I guess when I use the word mind, it's not the same as like thought, because thought can arise. And then the mind bends on itself and interprets the thought, attaches to the thought, gives the thought weight or meaning. That's the dream. The thought itself isn't the dream. The dream is the interpretation of the thought, of reality, of sensory experience, of whatever's arising. It's the interpretation. It's very simple. It's so simple. It's ridiculously simple. And I just like have been sitting and kind of like laughing, like, holy fuck. But how pervasive the interpretation is. Every moment is interpreted. Every moment is interpreted. Every time I look at my dog, there's Luna over there and Jennifer over here. That's an interpretation. Jennifer and Luna, distinct. That's an interpretation. In the visual field, depth is an interpretation. Time is an interpretation. The visual field is changing. The sensory experience is changing. Time is the way that the mind interprets that. Time is an interpretation. Distance is an interpretation. Even emotions are an interpretation. It's an interpretation of what's arising, and it's labeled and then categorized, and it's all just interpretation. And it's kind of magic. Like, I was sitting with that and just like, holy fuck. I was just like laughing. I was driving home this morning and just laughing in the car, like, this is some whack ass shit. It's so simple. Holy shit. It's so simple. Oy, oy, oy. Like everything that happens in life, the mind interprets it, makes stories. That's stories and beliefs and That's where all suffering comes from, is interpretation. Interpretation of just this. Call it reality, just this. Phew. And it sounds so simple. And I see now where the term no mind comes from. It's not no thought. It's not like empty, total vast empty space. It's not like no thought arises, but it's like mind is seen through. Mind is an interpretation machine. It's the function that interprets what is. And that's where the entire dream comes from. That is the entirety of the dream. Like once, like seeing that, it's like the dream just popped. It popped. So there's not much to say. But part of what was, I guess part of what precipitated this, I don't know if I could say that anything precipitated this would just be more interpretation. It's just all interpretation. Was realizing how much interpretation there was. Somehow got into that, or, was really honest. Like something opened last night and I was just like, had to be really honest with myself about all the beliefs that were still here and how this Jennifer character, I just had to admit, like, all the heinous shit that you would never want to admit to another human being, like all the thoughts that, like, Jennifer thinks she's the most special one in the whole universe. The universe revolves around Jennifer. Jennifer wants to be adored and loved, and she judges things and people that she deems ugly, and judges these things and judges those things, and just all of the heinous shit. And I had to just look at it. And there was this moment of like feeling fucking crazy, like a raving loony, like a lunatic, legitimately. Like I was legitimately questioning like my sanity. I'm like, oh, am I willing to genuinely become insane? Like there was this moment of like, oh, I think I went too far. I think maybe I'm cracking. I think that I'm genuinely going crazy. And just was like writing out all this shit and just having to be like, whoa, by definition, by all of our interpretations, like the collective mind, the human collective mind, our interpretation is that everything that I was writing down would be categorized as somebody who was a narcissistic lunatic. And so there's this thing in me of like, is this just here? Or does everybody have this and we just hide it? We pretend. We pretend like we're not judging things. We like have these secret beliefs that we hide even from ourselves. Like wanting to be special, wanting to be the most special. And I had to admit too that like, oh, a big part of my experience of love, like love, even love is an interpretation. Love is a complete interpretation. The way that most human beings think about it, the way that I've been thinking about it. And that interpretation is all centered around separation. If there's no separation, there can be no interpretation, and vice versa. So all of that kind of led into just the depth of interpretation, And I got to this point of like, am I willing to genuinely lose my mind and to be seen as an actual crazy person, an insane person, if it means finding out what's true? And so there was kind of this this moment inside of like, here we fucking go. Here we fucking go. And then not soon after that, and so I guess where I was going earlier, something I was mentioning earlier, was there have been all these ways that I would like practice things, like have these practices, but what I've noticed is that like there are these moments where something opens and then like a so-called practice just begins to happen naturally, and there's no efforting behind it, there's no interpretation that I should be doing it, or that if I do it it's going to lead to awakening and blah 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 blah. And so there's just been this watching of the mind. Like every time there's some sort of like interpretation, it's like, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. Interpretation, 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 interpretation. And I guess you could call that, like, that might be another way of, like the inquiry, sitting and inquiring around, like, is that thought true? Is that thought true? Is that thought true? And for some reason that wording never resonated here, but there was something about just like interpretation, like that's an interpretation of reality. And it holds this much weight. Up kiss. Holds no weight whatsoever. It has no effect on actual reality, on the truth. And so that's where like all the like inner contraction and resistance and suffering, it's all interpretation of reality. That like, that's bad, that's good, this shouldn't be happening, this should be happening, I want this, I don't want this. It's all interpretation. It's very simple. I don't know that I have much more to say on this, honestly. I feel like I've already said too much. That's it. I will end with, what was it that I said at the start? This little like phrase came to me, that reality is just what's happening. It's just what's happening. The mind interprets reality, and interpretation is the dream that you live in. Interpretation is being asleep, believing the interpretation to be reality. Peace.